Hey, what's up everybody? Today we've got a report from Ripple, who have basically talked about all the trends in 2023 about cryptocurrency and blockchain from Ripple's perspective. I'm also going to give my own thoughts and perspectives and resources about all of this information. Of course, I dig into these documents all the time, so if you ever want to talk one-on-one with me, the links are in the description. So let's get into it. I'm trying out a new format here, and this format is essentially I'm creating these big threads on Twitter, and these threads are essentially thread versions of the research that I do for these videos. So considering I've done the research already, I've already looked into the documents, I've already made the thread, I'm just going to make a video going through the thread. If you ever want to stay up to date on the new threads before they come to video, then you just have to follow me on Twitter. And you can use the link in the description to follow on Twitter, or you can use the QR code that's on this video. The whole point of this report was for Ripple to kind of give an overview of how cryptocurrencies and blockchain is looked at by businesses and, as it says in the document, beyond. And there's lots of data and statistics used from feedback that they got from this report that is absolutely mind-blowing. When you look at where we are right now with cryptocurrencies, CBDCs, stablecoins, all of these things, versus where we are mentally, in our mental space, and it's very revealing. And so I'm going to read out the quote here. The vast majority of global finance decision makers, or upwards of 88%, believe that crypto and blockchain technology will have a significant or massive impact on business, finance, and society over the next 3 years. And I'm going to go back to that in a second, but one thing that really came up in this report was how important blockchain and cryptocurrency was being handled by Latin America. I don't go over that in the thread, so this is extra information, but Latin America, and you can see here when we get to the summary of findings, it says that the big picture, overall, Latin America is more bullish on enterprise and institutional use of crypto for businesses, followed by the Middle East, North Africa, North America, Asia Pacific, and Europe, Middle East, and Africa in that order. So Latin America is going to be one of the huge drivers for blockchain technology usage on the enterprise and institutional standpoint than any of the other regions. But they go completely under the radar, with the exception of the president of El Salvador adopting Bitcoin as legal tender. I didn't realize how far along Latin America was in their mindset. Very interesting. But the thing that really stood out to me in that quote that I read out a little bit earlier was the detail of the time frame mentioned. And as I said here, over the next 3 years, which is exactly what was said. You know, when I hear the next 3 years, immediately my brain goes to, okay, where is the next 3 years? We're in 2023, that brings us to 2026. Over the next 3 years means at any point in that time period. Well, what else is happening in that time period that would make these people who responded to this report and the statistics, or asked in the survey by Ripple, what would make them say that? Why would they say 3 years? It seems like a weirdly specific amount of years. Well, you know, the G20 cross-border payments timeline all ends at the end of Q4 2025 and going into 2026. That is when all the wholesale side of CBDCs and the institutional side of things will all be sorted, right? By the end of 2025. I don't think there's a mistake there. I think these big players, these institutions, these big financial players are all looking at that G20 timeline to say, okay, it's not happening right now, but in the next 3 years, it's going to be happening, and we've kind of got that time period to make our moves. I do not think it's a coincidence that they say 3 years and these cross-border payments timelines also resolve around that time period as well. And that's exactly what I've said here. You know, regulators and businesses are looking at this timeline very carefully and will time their migration to blockchain in accordance with the timelines posted by the G20, Bank of International Settlements, World Economic Forum. And I'm not limiting it to those three, but those types of entities are really calling the shots here. And of course, I made a video all about the timelines, and I dove deep into the timeline side of things. And you can also click the eye in the top right hand side of the video here to watch that exact video that I'm talking about right now. But the next piece of information I pulled out of this report was this. More than 25% of the world's population lacks access to basic financial services. Blockchain and crypto technology could significantly reduce the inefficiencies, inaccessibility, and high costs in the current financial system. So we're talking about the unbanked population here, right? And how many of these people, 25% of the population, are yet to be accessed by blockchain, or yet to have access to a financial instrument like blockchain could be. And it makes me think specifically all about the country of Palau and how they have a stablecoin on the XRP ledger that will be facilitating value transfer, making payments using that stablecoin, but the value being transmitted with the underlying asset being XRP. And when you click that link in the thread, you get taken to a video.
Relatively small population dispersed across many islands. We started talking to Palau probably a couple of years ago. We were talking with the president about his sort of strategy for the economy, both domestically and internationally.
So I'm not going to go any further. You can watch that as long as you like, but it's quite hard to listen to James Wallace talk all the time because he goes it's so annoying. Anyway, so when I think about, these unbanked nations, these unbanked people, they don't have central banks. They have banks in Palau that are actually American banks, part of the federal system, the Fed system. But the important thing I wanted to extract here was that when Ripple is meeting with these countries like Palau, like Singapore, like all of these places that they meet with, right? We know in Brazil, it's endless. They meet with all these countries. When they meet with these countries, there is an action plan. They say, how does your economy work? How do you want it to work? And how can we deliver the solution to that problem? And he said that. We went to Palau and simply asked them what they needed to improve, right? That's what they're doing with all the other countries. And he goes further on in that interview to say that 2 years ago they met with Palau to talk about, what they wanted to do. And, so we've known about Palau for quite some time. It's nice to know the timeframes. It can take 2 years to put something into play, especially with a small entity like Palau. But all those people in Palau who cannot be qualified the same way as like a British person or an American person in terms of finances, the utilization of XRP for that population brings me kind of to a point of confidence when we talk about XRP being so widespread around the world and banking the unbanked. They also went in here to actually address the total addressable market, TAM. And here's what they said. The total addressable market, TAM, in finance use cases like lending and borrowing is in the dozens of trillions of dollars, with current institutional DeFi penetration of that market opportunity capturing less than 0.1%. Now, if we think about that, imagine, and the mind blow meme there that I put, imagine what it would be like when utility actually begins, because we should be under no illusion that utility has started right now. The price is too low. The price is too low to be at a point where it's stable and then usable by these institutions, especially to the degree we want them to. But then also, when you look at the total addressable market, looking at lending and borrowing being in the dozens of trillions of dollars, and we only have 0.1% as crypto in general, not even just XRP. Crypto in general represents 0.1% of the total addressable market, which is in the dozens of trillions of dollars. We have not started yet, and imagine what's going to happen when we do. I can't imagine a world where the price of these assets doesn't go crazy when at least we have 5% of the total addressable market, which is a massive underestimation. And I found even more reference to this kind of 3-year time period in the document, and here's what it said. Over 3/4 of those who are not already using or exploring digital asset services are either somewhat or very likely to do so in the next 3 years. So that's over 75% of companies want to be using digital assets, right, in the next 3 years. So they're all looking at that next 3-year time period, the deadlines that are part of that, and they're kind of making their moves at this point. This was something that was also particularly interesting, where they said finance leaders are particularly interested in holding cryptocurrency to make payments and for use as a hedge against inflation. So finally, we're starting to see these institutions see cryptocurrencies as multifaceted, and not just a hedge against inflation, which they all looked at Bitcoin for, not just a speculation asset, but also assets that can be used for payments, smart contracts. They're seeing the multifaceticity. Is that a word? They're seeing how adaptable and how varied cryptocurrencies are. And I think this is more of an alarming situation for me when I read this, thinking about how behind the institutions are versus our brains, the way our brains are working. We see so far into the future, we know exactly where it's going. It's alarming to see how excited these institutions are in these reports. And these aren't massive institutions. These are people who responded to Ripple's questions and they've obviously formulated a report. But it's astonishing to see how far behind their mentality is and their forethought is about cryptocurrency, especially when you see them get excited about saying, well, cryptocurrencies can also be used for payments. Like, well, yeah, and so much more, trade documents, security, identity, it's endless what we can do. Verification on the blockchain. Like, I wonder how long it's going to be until they start getting excited about that stuff. Or maybe it's all a big ploy to make it look like they don't know what's going on, but in fact they do. Probably that one. Now, one of the big things that's going to change this whole system to help migrate businesses and the whole world from the traditional system to the blockchain is going to be tokenization. And it says right here in this document, 83% of financial institutions said they were extremely or very interested in tokenization for their business versus 66% for the enterprise audience. So when we look at financial institutions, 83%, more than 3/4 of them, understand how tokenizing assets, real world assets on the blockchain is going to be very influential moving forward for their own businesses. And one thing that we know about financial institutions is that they only care about their businesses, right? They only care about that line of profitability. If it's going to increase profitability, make them more secure, enable them to offer new products to customers to make more money, then they're going to do it. And the interest in tokenization is going through the roof. And of course, I talked about the effect of tokenization on the XRP ledger specifically and how value is actually stored on the ledger in that big podcast that I did with Molly Elmore, Patrick Riley, Versan from Black Swan Capitalist, and Crypto Sensei. Again, you can click the eye in the top right-hand side of this video to watch that interview, but let's keep going. Almost half, 47% of the global finance leaders foresee the benefit of new revenue opportunities from NFTs, followed closely by the ability to better manage their data at 45%. Now, the thing that really blows my mind here and plays into the idea that I had that they're so far behind is that 67% of the people who participated in this survey perceived NFTs via a metaverse, basically a metaverse NFT, is the primary way that they perceive you would operate business with NFTs. Metaverse. How long ago? That was 2 years ago when we were talking about metaverse. And it kind of demoralized me further down that we went here. 51% of the participants in this survey also said that NFTs would be most likely used in ticketing. Then we've got loyalty reward programs, gaming, and IP access rights. And then 3% said NFTs won't be useful at all. What about smart contracts? Like having smart contracts held as NFTs? What about healthcare, using having a prescription as an NFT, or your data, your health data, so you can share that with insurance companies. How about that as an NFT? There's so many more better use cases for business in NFTs than metaverse loyalty reward programs. I mean, that was kind of demoralizing, but it just shows me again, we know they don't get it. And that's where I started thinking about, the whole trade finance thing, this whole blockchain bill that I talked about in a previous interview with the Whales of Wall Street channel on my channel as a podcast. Again, you can find that video clicking the eye in the top right hand side. But NFTs in the way of trade finance are going to be, it's put through to law. It's only a matter of like a month and a half until the electronic trades bill goes into action as in law, where we're using, NFTs and smart contracts to settle trade, like to do trade agreements. This is where NFTs actually are right now. And when they're talking about the other things, it's kind of demoralizing. But if you want to watch the video where I talk with Whales of Wall Street, you can click that eye. You can click the eye in the top right of the video. That's a very, very good video to watch. Next, they talk about decentralized identity, or DID. And it says, DID can be a foundational building block to this future by further enhancing compliance capabilities and providing a secure, decentralized way for individuals and institutions to verify their identities and ownership of assets. And again, that reminds me of the emphasis on decentralized identity. Always makes me think back to Bob Way talking at the Las Vegas event for XRP, and when he primarily talked about XRP as being great for identity, and he said that all before he talked about payments. Let me play the clip.
The XRPL is a fantastic platform for identity and money and ownership of digital goods.
And so what in particular draws
identity, money, and ownership of goods. He said it in that order. I found that so fascinating. But obviously the whole interview there is available for you to watch on that thread. And then I've put together an assortment of really interesting facts that came out of this report, and here they are. Tokenization of real world assets are a priority. And you can see here when you kind of look in a bit closer here, you can see that the real world assets, stocks, bonds, and commodities, saying that the impact of DeFi over the next 3 years is going to be a massive impact. Identities down there, just 2 spots lower. basically in tied second place. So of course, it won't be a surprise to everyone in here that they're talking a lot about tokenizing stocks, commodities, and bonds, right? That's a conversation we're hearing all the time, and we can see that in the results of this survey. And here's a really interesting one. 50+% of global finance leaders plan to use custody solutions in their business within the next 3 years. Meaning, from a wholesale perspective, as we know, the next 3 years, the G20 timeline, all of that, 50% of the global finance leaders are going to utilize custody. Now, if they're global finance leaders, they're probably going to be an institution, meaning they need institutional grade custody. So, of course, the main thing I think about here is, okay, well, PolySign, standard custody, Fireblocks, even the Uphold version for the institutional grade custody. These are all companies that are going to be a big deal in the next 3 years, right? So any opportunity to be involved in these companies at an early stage seems like the move is going to be towards institutional grade custody over the next 3 years. So you've even got a timeline there. So pay attention to any opportunities that come about that allow you to be involved in any capacity with these companies. It just seems like a good bet. And the one that gets all the XRP people excited is this one. Finance leaders expect big business benefits, improved operational efficiency, better data management, access to 24/7, 365 markets, greater financial flexibility across a variety of use cases, but particularly for use in payments, the very specific niche of all the crypto and blockchain world, very specifically into payments. And of course, we know there are only two that operate within that sphere, that operate within liquidity as a main function, and only one that is on the wholesale side. So I said right here, I said, cough, XRP cough, to cover it up, but it's obviously very apparent. I found this to be interesting also. These finance leaders are also prioritizing CBDCs over the use of cryptocurrencies, although it is quite close. The great thing here is that when we look at all of the options that they have, CBDCs, cryptocurrencies, and stablecoins, well, all three of those potentially can benefit XRP, at least the price of XRP. We can have CBDCs run on the XRP ledger, and when value is transferred, of course, you need an asset to provide that liquidity. You've also got cryptocurrencies directly, which could be any cryptocurrency that is basically tokenized on the XRP ledger, or just XRP itself. Then you've also got stablecoins, like the Palau stablecoin that runs on the XRP ledger, right? So that's the great thing here. They all run on the XRP ledger potentially, and this is what we're all excited about. And then finally, this is the one that takes the cake, the segment of this document that I enjoyed the most. It says this: cross-border payments was the most frequently selected response regarding the reason why they'd want a CBDC in the first place, is to resolve cross-border payments problems. Well, there's only really one asset that is positioned perfectly for cross-border payments in this blockchain environment, and I know just the technology to make that happen. I'm sure you do as well. So my plan is to make more threads like this. If you enjoyed the way I did this, then please let me know in the comments. You can also follow me on Twitter to be there before the video, I guess. If you want to watch me talk to experts in this field, you can watch this video right down in here. You can also watch this video up here, and that is the one that the algorithm has chosen for you based on your watching data. You can also click this button right here, and that will subscribe to the channel. And you can also join my 1% Mastermind Discord server by clicking here. Stay emotionless, and I'll see you in the next one.